It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Dr. Deborah Bright. Hello, Deborah. How are you?
Well, fine, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Let's see, you are the president of Bright Enterprises, and you're a leadership and performance coach. I've had quite a few leadership and performance coaches on the show, on this show, and also on our VE show. Funny enough, people are kind of doing the same thing, but everybody approaches it quite differently. I've had very little overlap between two performance and leadership coaches. They always have a different strategy. They tend to approach it from a different way. I guess my first question to you is, how many different ways can one approach leadership and performance coaching? There must be an infinite number of ways to do it, yeah?
Well, there are a number of ways, and I think I remember author Saul Gellerman who said, when it comes to motivation, there's really nothing new in management. And I think that that's probably the case, but I think it's how you express it. Because the one thing about leadership and performance is that success is determined by being, able to execute. So that's what separates. And that's one of the things, when I wrote the book, The Pro Achievement Principle, and how I set up my whole company, is that I'm trying to help people understand the whole idea is not to get smarter. You read these leadership books and they go on and on about what it is you need to do. You need to do this, you need to do that. My gosh, I get overwhelmed by the time I'm done, and I'm still trying to get my goals accomplished throughout the day and my work done. What I did in the Pro Achievement Principle and what I do when I coach people that I think puts me in a unique category is that I really focus on helping people to take what they know and use it effectively. And that's what I did in the Pro Achievement Principle. I said that it's up to you as an individual to self-adopt this idea that you can look to yourself to do things just a little bit better. You can set your own standards. We get into too much of a routine way of doing things, and I want people to stop and think, what is it that you can do to add value to situations? So I think that that's what separates. The other thing is that I do research all the skills that I create and develop, so I'm really original. And when I graduated from the university with getting my doctorate, I'm pretty simple. My professor said, Deb, do research. And so I've done research ever since I started this company, and I'm very fortunate. They've been published in a number of prestigious journals. And so what I try to do is, when I'm coaching people, and even the books that I've written, I try to do something that's substantial, that's proven to be effective, as opposed to my whole philosophy or just some faddish kind of skills.
Well, there doesn't seem to be a shortage of this. I guess that was my point. So it makes me wonder, are so many companies out there just, they haven't a clue as to what it means to have good leadership? Because there's an awful lot of void to be filled, it seems.
Well, again, going back to the research that I did at the time with the ASTD at the turn of the millennium with AMA, we did a national study on looking at leadership in the United States, and we found that we really have a void in training when it comes to leadership. There's no real consistency and commitment part of many organizations, and we really find a dearth of good leaders. So that's why you have so many coaches out there trying to compress the time frame that it takes to help people rise to the occasion to be an effective leader. Well, it's a big issue in this country.
It seems to be. It seems to be a huge issue. But that's not to say that the companies aren't making money, though, right?
Well, it's so interesting because, having worked with CEOs and continuing to work with CEOs, you don't have to have a perfect company in order to make money.
True enough. Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, but it's the idea of being able to have a company have all of its employees doing whatever they can to create value, and to be able to get the most out of people, so that not only are you servicing your customers well, but you're also making sure you have your employees who are motivated. And then you just don't know what heights a company can achieve. And so while you may be making money today, the question is, will you be there tomorrow? Right, Douglas?
Well, I would think so. The one thing that is curious about it, though, is that obviously bottom line is the bottom line for most companies. If they're making money, then the shareholders are happy if it's a public company, and the CEO and the board get along. But sometimes the employees are the ones who suffer at the hands of profit. And you might have a company that's making a lot of money, but the employees are miserable and it's a very toxic work environment, etc. I guess this is where you might come in to show the people in charge that it's actually beneficial for them financially if they have happy and motivated employees. Can you sort of make a presentation to them that shows that if they have happy and motivated employees, that their bottom line would increase?
Well, that wasn't, the focus of a lot of the research that I've done, and even with with writing the Pro-Achievement Principle. But I think that there has been numerous studies done that have shown, that's why we have, employee engagement scores, because we find that the more employees that are engaged in organizations and the more people are committed to the goals of the organization, that companies tend to be more successful. And so I think that in order to be competitive in a global market, it's important that we not only have the bottom line, but like as one CEO here in Tucson says, we've got to be valuable members of our community, and we've got to take care of our customers, and we need to take care of our employees. So if we really want to be competitive, we've got to look at all fronts today.
What is the guy's name who's the CEO of Starbucks? Maybe.
Oh, I
the famous one. I forget his name now, but he was one who sort of took to the principle of the shareholders came third.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you see that trend. And the question is, why not? For, CEOs, even as a small business owner, I belong to an executive group of women. And one of our big premises of being, together is to make sure that we help all boats rise. In other words, we want to help all our businesses, in the Tucson area do well, so it helps the community. And I think that that's really key. And as I said, the question is why not? And that's what's really, I think, key today in today's time, especially with all the emphasis on women in business and trying to make sure we're diverse in organizations. So I think that there's a real emphasis to take a look at the inside, not just a bottom line.
Howard Schultz.
Yes. Oh, you did it. That's great.
Well, you can credit my producer for that. He looked it up while we were talking.
That's great.
But yeah, Howard Schultz was the one who was kind of revolutionary with that, and really turned Starbucks around. Mm-hmm. You mentioned...
And continued to turn it around.
And continue.
Didn't he come back? I think he left for a while, and then he had to come back.
Yeah, I don't think he's the CEO now.
You know what it shows you, though, Douglas? It shows you the quality of good leadership. Remember McDonald's went down, and then McDonald's came back?
Oh, yeah.
Look at Home Depot goes down, Home Depot comes back. So it really shows the importance of good quality leadership. And one of the things, that I think that leaders have a trouble with, and, we're talking about today's times, leaders, keep trying to demand high performance and commitment from employees. And one of the things that I found in the research that I've done, and I expressed it in the Pro-Achievement Principle into this book, is that you can't really in 2021 demand it. it's got to come from within. And I liked, that's why I was so excited when Marshall Goldsmith did the foreword to my book, because he said, the book is really about helping people be a better me. And he said in a number of articles that he's written, I don't know if you're aware, but he wrote the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And he's a great coach, speaking of coaches. And he wrote in one of his articles that, managers don't empower people. People empower themselves. And that's the whole premise of the pro-achievement principle, is people need to look to themselves to set their own standards. And it needs to do it just a little bit better than what is expected. And I don't think when people are assigned a task, they just typically say, okay, I'll get it done, but they don't stop and say to themselves, what's the level of performance that's needed, and what can I do just a little bit better that would add value? And that's what I think leaders are desperately looking for from their team members. I mean, so many leaders that I work with are so frustrated that people don't seem to care about their work, and they just seem to get into the motions of doing what they do, and they don't even think about the impact or the value they can bring. And so that's what I think so many managers are frustrated with today.
Well, there is a funny balance there, though, because on the one hand, you've got people who are just looking for a job. And then you've got people that are really motivated, who probably would do better working in their own company rather than working for somebody else, a very entrepreneurial type person. And it always seemed to me that the people who just want to kind of do a 9-to-5 and come in and go through the motions and stuff should probably work for the government, because that's probably a better place for them than in the private sector, because the government just sort of spells out, here's what you're going to get, here's your raises, here's your thing, take it or leave it. And, there isn't a lot of motivation for people to exceed beyond their minimum requirements. Mm-hmm. That being said, in the private sector, I think it's important that people who are managers and CEOs of private companies have something at the end of the tunnel for their employees. And I think that sometimes is vague, don't you?
What do you mean by that, Douglas, is something at the end of the tunnel?
Well, typically when you get a job working in a particular company, your benefits are spelled out. You're going to get your raises, blah, 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 blah. However, if you do exceptionally well, you might get a bigger raise than the guy next to you who didn't perform as well. But I think there needs to be, perhaps more incentive, more things offered for people who do excel than what is currently being offered. Now, not all companies are the same. Some offer a lot. But I don't know. My scope is limited to, a few places that I've worked previously. But it seems to me that there just wasn't much incentive to do more than, what was required. In other words, not going above and beyond the call of duty, because there was no point to it. You didn't benefit personally from it.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions, and you're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Well, here's something that's really interesting, because there's a word that's not oftentimes talked about, and I'm thinking to yourself, maybe this is the reason you left, because there's, because you're no longer at those places, you're off on your own. There's this idea of pride. Pride of knowing that you did your very best in something. That's your own standard. That doesn't come from a boss, and it doesn't need a reward. And that's one of the things about pro achievers. These are individuals who do what they do because they set their own standard. They don't need a boss to say rise to an occasion. They do it because they know that they'll learn something new. They'll learn that they'll challenge themselves, and it makes their job interesting. I mean, there is no job that's not interesting. There are only people who aren't interested. I mean, look at the person who does nails. I know, when you go to the nail place, this woman takes such pride in her work, and she's the owner, and she does nails, and she has a college degree, but she does this out of pride. And there's no reward in that, other than just the self-satisfaction that I did what I could do that was in my control to make a customer happy and to add value in some way. The person who folds clothes, the person who does your yards, the person who, or does your yards, but I mean the person who's out there, doing yard work. Yeah. These are people who, and you see them in all professions, the doctor who goes out of their way, to call a patient after they just came back from the hospital, just to say, I wanted to check to see how you do. There's no reward in that, except I'm doing it because I believe within myself, with the standard that I set, that it's the right thing to do. And it makes me feel good about who I am. And that's what it means about being a better me. Not everybody does something for a reward. And I think that's very important. And those are the kind of employees you really want to hire. Because those are the ones who really care about the success of the organization. And they don't look at the workplace as being about me. They look out for themselves, but it's not about themselves. And I think that's really key. I mean, as a small business owner myself, I can't afford to have employees who just want to show up and leave. I don't keep them. I can't afford that as a business owner. I need people who really care about what they do and want to make sure this business succeeds, because in being an entrepreneur, right, Douglas, it's extremely hard. Sure. I mean, you're taking all the risk. If you work for the government, there's no risk, and even when everybody else shuts down, people in the government are still getting paid. I mean,
that's true.
That's what makes entrepreneurism, that extra step that's so challenging is you take all the risk. You're like that tightrope that's 10 feet above the ground. You're no longer on the ground walking on some, tightrope that's, 3 inches off the ground just for practice. Entrepreneurs take on a lot of risk, and so I'm looking for very dedicated employees who want to learn, and I can't pay them a lot. And even when I had my company in New York City, I competed against the AT&Ts. I competed against Wall Street. My gosh, Morgan Stanley, all these J.P. Morgan. They pay my employees. If my employees worked there, they would get 3 times what they did working with Bright Enterprises. But they did it because they learned. They learned something. I tried to make sure they were learning. I gave them great responsibilities so that if they didn't show up on a particular day, they would be missed. And they knew they were adding value. That's exciting. Money doesn't give you that, or reward. The only thing I could do is reward them by giving them another desk to move to.
Do you think that's a dying breed of people?
No.
No?
I don't, but you have to look for them and know how to find them.
Oh, okay.
And I know I go back to my book, but I put in a lesson in the book of how you find pro achievers. They're out there, but you got to know how to spot them. and do it quickly. And I mean, I follow everything in that book. I mean, it puts a lot of pressure. No, I'm not kidding. But I mean, I follow the book. That's how I hire employees, and I have improved my hiring like 90%. I have people who just don't walk out, and give you your 2-week warning, because I don't know about you, Douglas. If I get a 2-week notice, it's very hard to find employees who have the skills that I need. And I need at least 4 to 6 weeks. And every time I work with a pro achiever, which I refer to as a pro achiever, they know how challenging it is to run a business. And so they always give me the courtesy and keep the agreement that they'll give me 4 to 6 weeks just to make sure I can hit the ground running. And I just find that to be very special. And they're out there, Douglas. They're out there. And they want to have a chance to be recognized and valued. I'll give you an interesting finding that we just did a National Management Association, the LPGA, and I got to give all these people credit, as well as Vistage, which is that executive group, and the Better Business Bureaus around the country. We did a national survey called Trends and Perspectives in the Workplace Today. And here's something that was really surprising. Do you know that 47% of managers find it's no longer necessary to meet one-on-one with their employees on a weekly basis? No longer necessary? How can you lead and manage? How can you find out what's important to an individual, what talents they have, what interests they have, and how you can show them how the value they bring to a company if they aren't sitting down talking to them?
Well, why did they think it's no longer necessary?
Well, the survey didn't go into that, but I did. I went out and I asked hundreds of leaders, managers. I said, what do you think's behind this? I got 2 most common answers. You ready? The first one, I'm not even going to give you a chance to answer. The first one, Douglas, is people said, well, I'm meeting because, most people were working remotely that I talked to, and they said, we're meeting all the time as a team. We're going over priorities and figuring out what's to get done. And so why do I need to meet with them one-on-one? The other most common comment I got is that, with technology today, I'm always accessible as a boss. They can email me, they can text me, they can phone me, they can reach me no matter, 24 hours a day. And so why do I need to meet with them? Let them initiate the meetings. And, I just found that to be really surprising, because that says they're more interested in the work getting done as opposed to the person behind the work who can really make a valuable difference in your organization. And that goes back to your comment about people just wanting to show up. That's what you encourage, is people to show up, because they're not valued. And if they leave, in less than 2 weeks, so what? You don't need me. And that's really unfortunate.
We could keep going on, but we do have to wrap this up. Your book is called Pro Achievement Principle: Cultivate Personal Skills for Effective Teams. And you said that the proceeds from the book, tell us that, what you said.
Oh, well, thank you. Because pro achievement is a kind of individual who self-adopts to do what they can do that's within their control to do things just a little bit better, to add value, is what that book is about. And pro achievers are really embedded in those victims from Tunnel to Towers and that foundation. And these are people who will save somebody's life they don't even know. A fireman, a police officer, someone in the military. They're out there because of not a reward, like we talked about earlier, right, Douglas? They're out there because they really care about what it is they do. And so we're donating a substantial portion of our royalties to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And I'm really happy to do so, because they really do exemplify pro achievement ways of thinking and operating.
Well, that's great. The last question is, do you have a website that you want to give out so people can come check out your book, check you out, your company?
Yeah, and it's Dr. Deb Bright. So it's Dr. Deb Bright. So it's Dr. Deb, B-R-I-G-H-T, like a bright day.
Like a bright day. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know we could have gone on a lot longer, but best of luck. How long has the book been out?
Well, thanks for asking. It's only been out since August, and when we just came out with the Kindle version, they can get it on Amazon, or they can get it through Barnes & Noble. They can order it. And you know what? We're really in the top 10 in job interviews already, and we're in the top 30 in management skills. So it just came out in August in the Kindle version in November. So we're just so delighted with the interest that's been taken in the book. And I'm just so excited that you were wanted to spend some time with me so that I could share to your listeners, what this book is about, because it really is unique. It's a how-to. It's not telling you everything from soup to nuts. It's just something that people get inspired to want to read, because it really gives you insights on how to be a better me and to build a better team. And I'm just excited about it.
Well,
I'm really proud.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you, nice talking to you, and best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thanks